Hello and welcome to our channel, where every story feels like a conversation over a warm cup of coffee. Today, we unravel a tale of mystery and intrigue, spun from the brilliant mind of Sherlock Holmes, as narrated by his steadfast companion, Dr. John H. Watson. Settle in for a long, atmospheric journey through Victorian London, where gas lamps flicker in the fog, and secrets lurk in the shadows of the grand Seville Opera House. Chapter 1. The Distressed Diva. Hello and welcome to our channel, where every story feels like a conversation over a warm cup of coffee. Today, we embark on a tale woven from the brilliant deductions of Sherlock Holmes, as recounted by his loyal friend, Dr. John H. Watson. Settle into the fog-draped streets of Victorian London, where gas lamps cast their feeble glow and secrets murmur in the shadows. Our story begins in the familiar haven of 221B Baker Street, but it will soon lead us to the grand Seville Opera House, where a tragedy is unfolded, staining the stage with blood. It was a bleak November evening in 1888, the sort that cloaked London in a fog so dense it seemed the city held its breath. The air was heavy with the scent of coal smoke and damp wool, and the distant clatter of hansom cabs echoed through the mist. I sat by the fire in our lodgings at 221B Baker Street, my pen scratching across the pages of my notebook as I endeavored to chronicle our latest adventure. The room was a comforting chaos of books, chemical apparatus, and Holmes's violin, which lay across his armchair, its strings gleaming faintly in the gaslight. Holmes himself lounged in his dressing gown, his long fingers plucking idly at the instrument, coaxing forth a mournful tune that seemed to dance with the flickering flames. The clock had just struck 7 when a sharp rap at the door broke the spell of our quiet evening. Mrs. Hudson, our ever-patient landlady, appeared, her face etched with the mild annoyance of one disturbed from her routine. "A lady to see you, Mr. Holmes," she announced, her tone suggesting she found the hour unseemly for visitors. Small reticule. Her velvet cloak, richly embroidered but damp at the hem, suggested a hasty journey through the rain-soaked streets. "Mr. Sherlock Holmes?" she asked, her voice a melodic contralto, tinged with a French accent softened by years in England. "And Dr. Watson, I presume?" "You presume correctly, madam," Holmes replied, rising with a fluid grace and gesturing to the armchair opposite his own. "Pray take a seat and tell us what brings you to Baker Street on such a dismal evening. You are clearly in distress, and I assure you, no detail of your tale will be deemed too trivial." The lady sank into the chair, her movements delicate yet strained, as though she carried a weight far heavier than her slight frame. "I am Madame Eleanor Duval," she began, her voice quivering like a plucked string, "prima donna of the Seville Opera House in Covent Garden. I come to you in desperation, for a calamity has befallen our company, a tragedy that threatens to unravel all we hold dear." Holmes leaned forward, his fingers steepled beneath his chin, his gaze fixed upon her with an intensity that seemed to pierce the very fog of her fear. "Proceed, Madame Duval," he said softly. "Begin at the beginning, and omit nothing." She drew a shuddering breath, her hands tightening around the reticule. "Last night, during our performance of Carmen, our lead baritone, Signor Antonio Rossi, was found dead upon the stage. He was stabbed through the heart, his blood pooling beneath him in a crimson tide. The audience, caught in the spell of the opera, thought it part of the act until the curtain fell. And then, Oh, the chaos. Screams. Panic. The orchestra faltering. It was as if the very soul of the opera house had been rent asunder. I felt a chill, not from the drafty room but from the vividness of her description. Stabbed during a performance, I asked. My medical instincts stirred. Was there no sign of the assailant? Surely, with so many eyes upon the stage. Madame Duval's night's performance, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I thought it a jest, perhaps from a rival, or an overzealous admirer. But now, after Rossi's death, I dare not dismiss it. Holmes took the note, unfolding it with care. I leaned closer, catching sight of the words scrawled in a hasty, uneven hand. Flee before the curtain falls, or blood will stain the stage. The ink was smeared, as though written in haste, and the paper bore the faint scent of lavender. Holmes held it to the light, his magnifying glass poised, his expression one of fierce concentration. A curious warning, he murmured, and one that suggests foreknowledge of the crime. Tell me, Madame Duval, who had access to your dressing room? Only the cast and crew, she replied, and perhaps a few trusted patrons who visit backstage. My door is often ajar before a performance as I prepare my voice and costume. Anyone could have placed it there. And Rossi, Holmes pressed. What of his secrets? You spoke of them with conviction. Madame Duval's cheeks flushed, and she looked away, her fingers twisting the lace of her gloves. Signor Rossi was a man of great talent, but also great entanglements. He owed money to unsavory characters, creditors who sent threatening letters. There were rumors, too, of rivalries within the company. He was not universally loved, though his voice could charm the heavens. And, she faltered, her voice dropping to a whisper. There were whispers of a liaison, one that caused much resentment. I know not the details, but I saw the anger in certain eyes. Holmes's lips curved into the faintest of smiles, the kind that signaled his mind was already racing ahead. Resentment is a potent motive, madame, but so is greed. Tell me, was Rossi in possession of anything valuable? Beyond his voice, that is. She nodded slowly. He was composing a new opera, a work he claimed would rival Verdi. The score was nearly complete, and he guarded it jealously. He said it would secure his legacy. The clink of teacups and the patter of rain filled the silence. Holmes returned to his armchair, his pipe now in hand, the smoke curling like the fog outside. "What say you, Watson?" he asked, his voice tinged with amusement. "A murder on a stage, a cryptic note, and a score worth killing for. A fine evening's work, is it not?" I shook my head, marveling at his enthusiasm. "A grim business, Holmes, but I confess my curiosity is piqued. Who would dare strike in the midst of an opera, with hundreds watching?" "Precisely the question," he replied, his eyes gleaming. "The stage is set, Watson, and tomorrow we shall tread its boards. But mark my words, this is no simple crime of passion or theft. There is art in this murder, and we shall uncover its composer." Key visual moment. Holmes examining the crumpled note under his magnifying glass, the firelight casting shadows across his sharp features. The note's text is faintly visible, with the words "Flee before the curtain falls" standing out in bold ink. Thumbnail idea, Holmes holding the note, with the silhouette of the Seville Opera House looming in the background, a blood-red stain spreading across the stage. Background music. Soft, melancholic violin strains echoing Holmes's own playing, with a subtle undercurrent of suspenseful strings to hint at the mystery unfolding. Sound effects. Rain against the window, the crackle of the fire, the sharp rap of the door, and the rustle of Madame Duval's cloak as she enters. Engagement prompt. What do you make of Madame Duval's note? Is it a warning, a threat, or something else? Share your theories in the comments below. Chapter 2. Shadows on the Stage. The morning following Madame Duval's visit dawned cold and gray, with the fog of London retreating only to leave a damp chill that clung to the bones. I awoke in our lodgings at 221B Baker Street to find Sherlock Holmes already dressed, his lean figure pacing before the window, his eyes fixed on the street below where hansom cabs rattled, cathedral of art and elegance, its spires piercing the low clouds. Yet there was a somber air about it, as though the building itself mourned the tragedy within. We alighted before the grand entrance, where posters for Carmen still hung, their vibrant colors now seeming garish in light of Rossi's death. The doors were opened by a porter, a wiry man with a nervous twitch, who led us into the foyer. The interior was a marvel of gilt and crimson, with chandeliers glittering faintly in the morning light, and a grand staircase curving upward like the sweep of an aria. But it was the auditorium that drew us, its vast expanse of seats empty save for the echoes of last night's chaos. Holmes strode purposefully to the stage, his long coat trailing behind him like a cape. The boards were polished to a mirror sheen, save for a dark, irregular stain near the center, a grim reminder of Rossi's fate. The blood had dried to a rusty hue, and I felt a pang of unease, my medical training conjuring images of the wound that must have caused such a flow. Holmes, however, was undeterred, dropping to his knees with the agility of a cat, his magnifying glass already in hand. "Observe, Watson," he said, his voice low but vibrant with focus. "This stain is not merely a pool, but a map. See here." He pointed to a series of faint scuff marks radiating from the blood, like ripples in a pond. These are not the marks of a struggle, but of someone dragging a heavy object. A prop, perhaps, or something more sinister. And here, he traced a line of smudged boot prints, barely visible against the polished wood. These were made after the blood had begun to dry, suggesting the intruder lingered. I crouched beside him, straining to see what his keen eyes discerned. Could it have been a stagehand, clearing the scene? I ventured. Holmes's lips twitched in a faint smile. A stagehand would not tread so cautiously, nor leave such a singular trail. No, Watson, this was someone who wished to avoid wings, Holmes pressed. Who lingered there? Only the crew, myself, the prop master, and Rossi's understudy, Mr. Vance. A few patrons in the boxes might have had a view, but the house was packed, Mr. Holmes. Hundreds of eyes, and yet no one saw the deed. Holmes's gaze flickered to the wings where heavy curtains hung like sentinels. "Curious," he murmured. "A murder in plain sight, yet invisible. Tell me, Mr. Poole, was Rossi a man without enemies?" Poole's hesitation was brief but telling. "He was beloved by the audience," he said carefully, "but he kept to himself off stage. A private man, you might say. I know of no one who wished him harm." Holmes's eyes narrowed, catching the falter in Poole's voice. "And yet he is dead," he said softly. "We shall need to speak with the cast and crew. But first, I wish to examine the stage more closely." We moved to the wings, where ropes and pulleys formed a forest of shadows. Holmes's lantern cast a wavering light, revealing a clutter of props, swords, goblets, and a papier-mâché bull from Carmen's bull ring scene. He paused at a trap door set into the stage, its edges worn but recently disturbed, as evidenced by the lack of dust. "This leads to the understage," he said, lifting the hatch with a creak that echoed in the silent theater. "A perfect route for an unseen exit." We descended a narrow ladder into a dank, cavernous space beneath the stage, where beams crisscrossed like the ribs of some great beast. The air was thick with the scent of mold and sawdust, and the faint drip of water echoed somewhere in the darkness. Holmes moved with purpose, his lantern illuminating a trail of footprints in the dust, small, delicate, and dusted with a fine white powder. "Talcum," he said, rubbing a pinch between his fingers. "Common among dancers to prevent slipping. These prints were made after the performance, Watson, when the stage was supposedly cleared." I followed his gaze, my heart quickening. "A woman, then? One of the chorus?" "Perhaps," Holmes replied, his tone non-committal. "Or a clever ruse to requesting a list of all who had access to the stage that night." As we left the opera house, the fog had thickened once more, wrapping the building in a shroud. Holmes was silent, his mind no doubt weaving the threads of what we had seen. "What do you make of it, Holmes?" I asked, unable to contain my curiosity. "The footprints, the handkerchief, do they point to the killer?" He lit his pipe, the flame briefly illuminating his sharp features. "They point to a story, Watson, but not yet the truth. The footprints suggest a woman, yet their placement is too convenient. The handkerchief bears initials, yet it was left in plain sight. Our killer is either careless or cunning, and I suspect the latter. We must look beyond the obvious, to the motives that lurk in the shadows of the Seville Opera House." I nodded, though the complexity of the case was already daunting. "And the score Madame Duval mentioned, could it be the key?" Holmes's eyes gleamed. "A score worth a fortune is no small prize, Watson. But murder is rarely about money alone. There is passion here, and betrayal. We shall return tonight, when the theater is dark, to uncover what lies hidden in its depths." Key visual moment. Holmes crouching over the bloodstain on the stage, his magnifying glass catching the light as he traces the scuff marks. The crimson curtains loom behind him, and the faint outline of footprints leads to the trapdoor. Thumbnail idea. Holmes's silhouette against the bloodied stage, with shadowy footprints fading into the dark wings. Background music. Tense, suspenseful strings, with faint echoes of an opera aria, creating an atmosphere of mystery and foreboding. Sound effects. The creak of the trap door, the distant drip of water in the understage, the rustle of curtains, and the soft scrape of Holmes's boots on the polished boards. Engagement prompt. Who do you think left the footprints? A dancer, a stagehand, or someone else with talcum? Do you truly believe they belong to a woman, Holmes? He exhaled a plume of smoke, his lips curling faintly. I believe nothing, Watson, until the evidence compels me. The prints are suggestive, but suggestion is not proof. We must follow where they lead. Quite literally. The cab rattled us back to 221B Baker Street, where I spent the afternoon transcribing our findings, while Holmes buried himself in a stack of opera programs and newspaper clippings about the Seville company. His silence was punctuated only by the occasional murmur or the scratch of his pencil as he jotted notes. By evening, the fog had deepened into a pea souper, and the gas lamps along Baker Street glowed like will-o'-the-wisps. We donned our coats and set out once more, Holmes carrying a small lantern to pierce the murk. The Seville Opera House at night was a different beast. Its grandeur was muted, the gilt and marble swallowed by shadows, and the silence was oppressive, broken only by the creak of our footsteps on the foyer's marble floor. The porter, clearly uneasy at our late arrival, admitted us with a muttered warning about ghosts. Holmes dismissed him with a wave, his focus already on the stage. We entered the auditorium, the rows of empty seats stretching into darkness like a silent audience. The stage loomed ahead, its crimson curtains drawn back to reveal the bloodstain, now a grim centerpiece under the faint glow of a single gaslight. Holmes wasted no time, descending to the trapdoor we had discovered earlier. Its hinges groaned as he lifted it, revealing the ladder to the understage. "Come, Watson," he said, his voice low but eager. "The footprints await." The understage was colder than before, the air damp and heavy with the scent of mold and old wood. Holmes's lantern cast long, wavering shadows, making the beams and crates seem to shift and sway. He moved with the precision of a bloodhound, his light trained on the trail of small footprints we had noted earlier. They were faint but unmistakable, their talcum-dusted outlines leading deeper into the labyrinthine space. "These prints are fresh," Holmes remarked, crouching to examine them. "Made within the last day, like a clue left so conveniently. It feels like a trap, Holmes." "Or a performance," he replied, his voice tinged with amusement. "Our killer is staging a drama, Watson, and we are the audience. But let us see where this act leads." He continued along the passage, the footprints guiding us to a rough-hewn wall where a low, narrow door was set, its edges flush with the wood. It was locked, but Holmes produced a set of picks from his pocket and had it open in moments. Beyond lay a tunnel, its stone walls damp and glistening, stretching into darkness. The footprints continued, fainter now, as though their maker had grown cautious. "This tunnel," Holmes said, "likely connects to the backstage areas, perhaps even the patron boxes. A perfect route for an unseen escape." He stepped forward, his lantern casting eerie flickers on the walls. I followed, my revolver at the ready, though the silence was more unnerving than any sound. The tunnel twisted and turned, its air growing colder as we descended. At length we reached a junction where the footprints veered left, toward a wooden ladder leading upward. Holmes climbed swiftly and I followed, emerging into a cramped alcove behind the proscenium arch. We were back in the theater, but in a hidden nook overlooking the stage. The footprints ended here, but a new discovery awaited. A small silver cigarette case, its surface etched with a floral pattern, lying discarded in the dust. Holmes picked it up, his magnifying glass tracing its contours. "This is no stagehand's trinket," he said. "The craftsmanship suggests wealth, and the monogram CB narrows our field. But the blood on the glove and the placement of this case, they are too deliberate. Our killer wants us to find these things." I frowned, my mind grappling with the implications. To frame someone, perhaps? But who is CB? "Possibly Clara Beaumont, a chorus girl in the company," Holmes replied, recalling the cast list Poole had provided. or another whose initials match. We shall inquire discreetly, but first let us retrace our steps. Random act, Watson. The footprints, the glove, the cigarette case, they are props in a carefully crafted scene. But whose hand directs this play? I shivered, the weight of his words settling over me. What next, then? Do we confront Poole again or seek out this Clara Beaumont? Holmes's eyes gleamed in the lantern light. We shall do both, but with caution. Tomorrow we interview the cast, starting with Miss Beaumont. Her initials on the cigarette case are no coincidence, but whether she is culprit or pawn remains to be seen. For now, let us return to Baker Street and consider the stage we have been given. As we stepped out into the fog, the opera house loomed behind us, its windows dark and unyielding. The streets were silent, save for the distant cry of a night watchman, and I felt the weight of the mystery pressing upon me. Holmes, however, seemed invigorated, his mind already piecing together the fragments we had uncovered. Back at 221B, as the fire crackled and the fog pressed against the windows, I watched Holmes sketch a diagram of the stage and tunnel, his pencil moving with the precision of a conductor. "The footprints are our guide, Watson," he said, "but they are only one voice in the chorus. The blood, the initials, the hidden paths, they all sing of a motive yet to be revealed." I nodded, my thoughts swirling. "And the moral of this tale, Holmes, if there is one?" He paused, his eyes distant. "That truth is often hidden in plain sight, obscured by the very drama meant to distract us. But we shall find it, Watson, as surely as the curtain falls." Key visual moment: Holmes holding the bloodied glove and silver cigarette case in the understage, his lantern casting long shadows across the damp stone walls. The faint outline of talcum-dusted footprints leads into the dark tunnel. Thumbnail idea: a close-up of the glove and cigarette case, with ghostly footprints fading into a shadowy tunnel, the opera house's crimson curtains faintly visible in the background. Background music: low, ominous strings, building tension with a faint echo of a distant opera aria, evoking the theater's haunting atmosphere. Sound effect, sharp as ever, betrayed a mind that had scarcely rested. "Good morning, Watson," he said without looking up, his pencil tracing the path of the understage tunnel we had discovered. "Our phantom's footprints have set the stage, but today we must turn our gaze to the players themselves. The cigarette case marked CB, and the bloodied glove suggest a drama of human passions. Jealousy, ambition, perhaps revenge. We begin with Mr. Lionel Vance, Rossi's understudy, who stands to gain most from his death." I nodded, still groggy from the late night but stirred by the promise of progress. "Vance, yes. If Rossi was as beloved as Poole claims, surely his understudy harbored some resentment, waiting in the wings." Holmes's lips twitched in a faint smile. "Precisely, Watson. Resentment is a potent motive, but we must also consider Clara Beaumont, whose initials adorn that cigarette case. Come, we have a busy day ahead." After a hasty breakfast, we set out for Covent Garden, the morning bustle of market vendors and flower girls a stark contrast to the grim purpose of our journey. Our destination was not the opera house, but the modest lodgings of Lionel Vance, located in a narrow street off Drury Lane. The building was respectable but worn, its brick facade streaked with soot, and the air carried the faint scent of boiled cabbage from a nearby tavern. Vance greeted us at the door of his small apartment, his handsome features framed by a shock of dark hair and a smile that seemed practiced yet strained. He was younger than I expected, perhaps 30, with the polished charm of a man accustomed to the stage. His rooms were tidy, if sparsely furnished, with a small piano in one corner and a stack of sheet music on a table. "Mr. Holmes, Dr. Watson," he said, gesturing to a pair of chairs. I heard you were investigating poor Rossi's death. A terrible loss to the company. Indeed, Holmes replied, his tone neutral as he surveyed the room with a glance that missed nothing. You were in the wings during the fatal scene, Mr. Vance. Tell us, what did you observe? Vance poured tea from a chipped pot, his hands steady but his eyes wary. It was chaos, Mr. Holmes. The stage was alive with— Well, did he have enemies within the company? Vance's smile tightened. Every star has rivals, Dr. Watson. Rossi's voice was unmatched, but his manner could be abrasive. He demanded perfection, which some found grating. But enemies? I wouldn't say so. Holmes's eyes narrowed, catching the subtle shift in Vance's tone. And your own ambitions, Mr. Vance. With Rossi gone, you take the lead role, a significant step for a young baritone. Vance's cheeks flushed, but he met Holmes's gaze. I admired Rossi, Mr. Holmes. His death is a tragedy, but I am ready to serve the company. I've trained for years for such a chance. Holmes rose, his movements deliberate as he examined the room. His gaze lingered on a desk piled with papers, and with Vance's reluctant permission, he sifted through them. Among the bills and rehearsal schedules, he uncovered a letter, its edges crumpled, written in Rossi's bold hand. Holmes read it aloud, his voice low and deliberate. Vance, your petty sabotage will not go unnoticed. Cease, or I shall ensure you never sing again. Vance paled, his composure cracking. That was a misunderstanding, he stammered. Rossi thought I tampered with his props, a loosened sword hilt, a misplaced costume. It was nonsense, a stagehand's error. I swore to him I was innocent. Holmes pocketed the letter, his expression inscrutable. Yet the accusation stands, Mr. Vance, and the opportunity presented by Rossi's death is undeniable. We shall speak again. As we left Vance's lodgings, the fog had begun to lift, revealing the bustling streets of Covent Garden. Holmes was silent, his mind no doubt weaving the threads of Vance's testimony. He has motive, Watson, he said at length. But his denial rings true, at least in part. The letter suggests tension, but sabotage is not murder. We must seek Miss Beaumont next. Our next stop was a boarding house near the Opera House where Clara Beaumont, the chorus girl whose initials matched the cigarette case, resided. Footprints, small and dusted with talcum, leading to the very spot where this case lay. You are a dancer, are you not? Talcum is your trade. Miss Beaumont flushed, her hands clenching. I am, but I swear I've not set foot in the understage. I admired Rossi despite his faults. He was kind to me once, when others overlooked me. His faults? I asked, sensing an opening. She hesitated, then spoke in a rush. He could be cruel, dismissive. He mocked my singing, said I'd never rise above the chorus. But I didn't hate him, not enough to. Her voice broke and she buried her face in her hands. Holmes's tone softened, but his eyes remained sharp. Miss Beaumont, where were you during the fatal scene? In the chorus, on stage, she replied. I was among the dancers, lost in the crowd. I saw Rossi fall, but like everyone, I thought it part of the act until the blood. She shuddered, her eyes glistening. We left her with assurances of discretion, but as we stepped into the street, Holmes's expression was grim. Her distress seems genuine, Watson, but the cigarette case places her, or someone using her possessions at the scene. We are dealing with a web of motives, each strand knotted with deceit. Back at Baker Street, Holmes spread his findings across the table. The letter from Rossi, the cigarette case, the bloodied glove, and his sketch of the stage. Vance has ambition. Beaumont has resentment, he mused. But the footprints and the planted clues suggest a third player, one who knows the theater's secrets. We must return to the Opera House, Watson, and explore that tunnel further. Its path may lead us to the heart of this mystery. I felt a thrill of anticipation, tempered by unease. And the moral here, Holmes? If there is one? He lit his pipe, the smoke curling like the fog outside. That motives are like shadows, Watson, ever present, yet shifting with the light. We must shine our own upon them to see their... Chapter 5. The Hidden Passage. The fog that had cloaked London for days seemed to thicken with our purpose as Sherlock Holmes and I prepared to return to the Seville Opera House. It was well past 10 o'clock that evening when we set out, the city hushed under a mantle of mist that muffled the clatter of hooves and the cries of night vendors. At 221B Baker Street, Holmes had spent the afternoon poring over his notes, his sketch of the theater's understage spread across the table like a battle map. The bloodied glove, the cigarette case marked C.B., and Rossi's accusing letter to Lionel Vance lay beside it, each a piece of the puzzle that consumed him. "Watson," he said as he donned his overcoat, "the footprints in the tunnel we found suggest a hidden route through the Opera House, a path known only to a few. Tonight we shall follow it to its end. The killer used it to strike unseen, and I suspect it holds further secrets." I checked my revolver, a precaution Holmes rarely discouraged in such ventures, and we stepped into the night. The streets were a labyrinth of shadows, the gas lamps casting pools of light that barely pierced the fog. Our hansom cab rattled through Covent Garden, the driver's lantern swaying like a beacon, until the Seville Opera House emerged, its marble facade ghostly in the gloom. The porter, the same nervous fellow from our earlier visit, admitted us with reluctance, muttering about the lateness of the hour. Holmes dismissed his concerns with a curt nod, his lantern already lit as we made our way to the auditorium. The vast space was eerier at night, the rows of seats swallowed by darkness, the stage a silent altar where Rossi's blood still stained the boards. Holmes moved with purpose, his lantern casting long shadows as we descended once more through the trapdoor into the understage. The air below was damp and cold, the scent of mold and sawdust sharper in the stillness. Holmes's light traced the talcum-dusted footprints we had followed before, their delicate outlines leading to the narrow tunnel we had discovered. "This passage," he said, his voice low but resonant in the confined space, "is no mere soft click." A section of the wall swung inward, revealing a narrow passage barely wide enough for a man to pass. The air within was stale, tinged with the faint scent of grease paint and wax. We squeezed through, the passage sloping upward, its walls rough and unadorned. Holmes's lantern revealed more scuff marks, and then, glinting in the dust, a single pearl earring, its luster dulled by grime. He picked it up, examining it under his magnifying glass. "A lady's earring," he murmured, "and recently lost, judging by the lack of dust. Another breadcrumb in our trail, Watson, but whether it leads to the killer or a trap remains to be seen." I frowned, the accumulation of clues both illuminating and confounding. First a glove, then a cigarette case, Now an earring. Are these mistakes, Holmes, or deliberate misdirection? He smiled faintly, his eyes gleaming in the lantern light. A performance, Watson, staged for our benefit. The killer wishes us to follow. But to what end? Let us find out. The passage climbed steeply, ending at a wooden panel that opened with a push into a small alcove behind the proscenium arch. We were back in the theater, but in a vantage point overlooking the stage from the side, hidden by heavy curtains. The view was perfect for observing the performance unnoticed, and I realized with a chill that it offered access to the patron boxes above. This explains how the killer moved unseen, Holmes said, his voice barely above a whisper. From the understage to the boxes, bypassing the stage entirely. He examined the alcove, his lantern revealing more signs of recent use, faint smudges of boot polish and a scrap of torn fabric caught on a splinter. The fabric was fine, possibly silk, and dyed a deep crimson, suggesting a costume or cloak. Holmes pocketed it, his expression thoughtful. The earring and this fabric point to someone of means, perhaps a patron or a performer with access to fine garments. But the boot polish suggests another presence, as we saw in the understage. Dealings. The patron boxes are reserved for the wealthy, perhaps a financier or nobleman with a stake in the opera house. We must cross-reference the box holders with our clues. We continued our search, but the storage room yielded no further evidence. The tunnel's other branches led to maintenance areas, their exits locked and undisturbed. Holmes noted each detail, his mind cataloging the theater's hidden geography. As we emerged back onto the stage, the hour was nearing midnight, and the opera house felt like a tomb, its silence broken only by the distant creak of settling wood. Holmes stood by the bloodstain, his lantern casting a halo around him. "This passage," he said, "is the key to the murder. The killer entered through the trapdoor, struck during the blackout in Carmen's third act, and escaped via the alcove to the boxes. The earring, the playbill, the fabric, they are either errors or lures. But they confirm one thing: the killer is intimate with the theater's secrets." I shivered, the weight of the dark pressing in. And the score? If it's truly gone, it could be anywhere by now. Holmes's lips curved in a grim smile. "Not far, Watson. A prize so valuable would not be discarded lightly. We shall seek it among those closest to Rossi, Vance, Beaumont, perhaps even Madame Duval herself. Tomorrow we delve deeper into their lives." As we left the opera house, the fog enveloped us once more, the porter's lantern a faint beacon as he locked the doors behind us. The streets were empty, the city asleep. But my mind raced with the images of the night, the hidden passage, the pearl earring, the singed playbill. Holmes, as ever, seemed unperturbed, his pipe glowing as we walked. "What lesson do we draw from this, Holmes?" I asked, seeking to anchor myself in his clarity. He paused, the fog swirling about him like a cloak. "That secrets, like passages, are built to be hidden, yet they always leave a trace. Our task is to follow those traces, Watson, no matter how cleverly they are disguised." And I prepared for an unexpected twist in our investigation. A charity masked ball at the Seville Opera House, scheduled for that very evening. The invitation had arrived at 221B Baker Street in the late morning, a gilt-edged card tucked among Holmes's papers, sent by Madame Eleanor Duval herself. She urged our attendance, hinting that the event might draw out those connected to Signor Rossi's murder. Holmes, ever alert to opportunity, saw it as a chance to observe the opera company and its patrons in a setting where masks might lower inhibitions and reveal truths. "Watson," he said, adjusting his cravat before the mirror. "A masked ball is a stage of its own where secrets hide behind costumes and motives dance in plain sight. We shall blend into the crowd, but our eyes must be sharp. The earring, the playbill, the hidden passage, all point to someone with intimate knowledge of the theater. Tonight we may catch them unawares." I donned a simple domino mask and a borrowed evening coat, feeling rather out of place among the finery Holmes had procured for the occasion. His own disguise was subtle yet effective. A black half-mask that accentuated his sharp features, paired with a tailored suit that gave him the air of a mysterious nobleman. As we stepped into the fog, the gas lamps of Baker Street flickered like stars in a clouded sky, and our hansom cab rattled toward Covent Garden, the clatter of hooves a steady rhythm in the night. The Seville Opera House was transformed for the ball, its marble facade aglow with torchlight, its foyer a kaleidoscope of color and movement. Guests in elaborate costumes, harlequins, queens, and phantoms, swirled through the grand staircase, their laughter mingling with the strains of a waltz played by a string quartet. The air was heavy with the scent of perfume, wax, and the faint musk of anticipation. Holmes and I slipped into the crowd, our masks granting us anonymity as we navigated the throng. The auditorium had been cleared of seats, its vast floor now a ballroom where couples danced beneath chandeliers that glittered like constellations. Auburn hair unmistakable beneath a silver mask, her movements hesitant as she lingered near the refreshment table. The stage manager, Clarence Poole, was absent, likely overseeing the event from backstage. But I caught sight of a man in a harlequin mask who seemed to hover near Madame Duval, his posture tense, his movements almost predatory. Holmes noticed him too. "Our harlequin," he said softly, "is no mere reveler. Watch how he shadows Madame Duval, yet avoids her direct gaze. Let us approach." We wove through the dancers, the waltz swelling around us, its melody both festive and faintly ominous. The harlequin, sensing our approach, turned abruptly and slipped toward the wings, his motley costume blending into the shadows. Holmes quickened his pace, and I followed, my heart pounding as we pursued him through a side door into the backstage corridors. The music faded, replaced by the creak of floorboards and the distant hum of the crowd. The corridor was dimly lit, its walls lined with props and costumes. The harlequin moved swiftly, but Holmes was swifter, his long strides closing the gap. "Stop, sir!" he called, his voice sharp but controlled. The figure hesitated, then darted through a curtained doorway. We followed, emerging into a small prop room cluttered with mirrors and mannequins dressed in old costumes. The harlequin stood cornered, his hands raised in a gesture of surrender. Holmes stepped forward, his lantern, produced from his coat, casting a stark light on the man's masked face. "Remove your mask," Holmes commanded, his tone brooking no refusal. The figure complied, revealing a young woman with auburn hair and wide, frightened eyes, Clara Beaumont. Her harlequin costume was ill-fitting, as though chosen in haste, and her hands trembled as she clutched a folded playbill. "I meant no harm," she stammered. "I was only watching Madame Duval. I feared for her." Holmes's eyes narrowed, but his voice was calm. "Miss Beaumont, you seem to have a habit of appearing where clues are found. First your cigarette case, now this. He only came to see who might be here, who might know about Rossi." I interjected, my concern growing. "Miss Beaumont, you must be honest. Were you in the understage after Rossi's death? Your cigarette case was found there, near footprints dusted with talcum." She shook her head vehemently. "I told you I lost that case days ago. I've never been to the understage. I swear it." Holmes's gaze was piercing, but he nodded. "Very well, Miss Beaumont. Return to the ball, but speak of this to no one. We shall investigate this attic meeting ourselves." She fled, her harlequin costume flapping as she disappeared into the corridor. Holmes turned to me, his expression alight with purpose. "The cipher is no coincidence, Watson. Someone is orchestrating this drama, drawing us deeper into the theater's secrets. The attic at midnight. Let us not be late." We returned to the ballroom briefly, ensuring our absence had not been noted, then made our way to the upper reaches of the opera house. The attic was accessed via a narrow staircase behind the costume department, its steps creaking under our weight. The air grew musty, the scent of old fabric and dust replacing the perfume of the ball. The attic was a vast, shadowy space, cluttered with trunks, broken props, and cobwebs that shimmered in the lantern's light. Holmes moved silently, his lantern low to avoid detection. At precisely midnight, a faint sound reached us, the creak of a floorboard, followed by the rustle of fabric. We crouched behind a trunk, watching as a figure in a dark cloak emerged from the shadows. The figure carried a small bundle, which they placed in a crate before retreating. Holmes sprang forward, reaching the crate just as the figure vanished down a side passage. Inside the crate was a single sheet of music, its edges worn but its notes meticulously penned. Rossi's unpublished score, or a fragment of it. Holmes's eyes gleamed. "The prize," he said, "or a piece of it. But why leave it here? To retrieve it later? Or to lure us?" I felt a chill, the attic's darkness pressing in. This feels like looming in the distance. Background music, a lively waltz for the ball, transitioning to tense, muted strings as the pursuit begins, with a haunting violin for the attic scene. Sound effects. The swell of ballroom music, the creak of floorboards, the rustle of Clara's costume, and the soft thud of the crate being opened. Engagement prompt. Is Clara Beaumont a victim or a suspect? What do you make of the cipher and the attic rendezvous? Share your thoughts in the comments. Chapter 7. A Duel of Wits. The masked ball at the Seville Opera House had left us with more questions than answers, and as Sherlock Holmes and I returned to 221B Baker Street through the fog-shrouded streets, the weight of the mystery pressed heavily upon me. The single sheet of Rossi's unpublished score, found in the attic crate, lay folded in Holmes's pocket, its cryptic presence a tantalizing clue. The ciphered playbill, pointing to a midnight rendezvous, and Clara Beaumont's tearful denial of involvement swirled in my mind, mingling with the images of the bloodied glove, the pearl earring, and the hidden passage. Holmes, as ever, seemed invigorated by the complexity, his sharp features illuminated by the glow of his pipe as we settled by the fire. "Watson," he said, spreading the score and the playbill on our cluttered table, "we are engaged in a duel of wits with a mind as cunning as it is ruthless. The score, the cipher, the planted clues, All are moves in a game designed to mislead. But every move reveals the player, if one knows how to look. I leaned over the table, my eyes tracing the elegant notes of Rossi's score. The score is the key, isn't it? Its value could tempt anyone. Vance, Beaumont, even a patron with debts. Holmes's lips curled in a faint smile. Precisely, Watson. But the score is only part of the prize. The cipher suggests a conspiracy, and Clara Beaumont's presence at the ball, masked as a harlequin, is no coincidence. We must confront her again. But first we polish matches the marks in the understage. A second player, Watson, shadowing our phantom. He examined the crate, his fingers tracing its edges. Tucked beneath a splintered board, he found a small key, its brass surface tarnished but intricately engraved with a floral pattern. A key to a lock we have yet to find, he murmured, pocketing it. Perhaps a dressing room, or a safe. The plot thickens. We searched the attic further, navigating trunks stuffed with moth-eaten costumes and broken props. In a corner, half hidden by a tattered curtain, Holmes discovered a bundle of letters tied with a ribbon. The handwriting was Rossi's, and the contents were a revelation. Angry missives addressed to Clara Beaumont, accusing her of betraying his trust. One letter read, "Your lies have cost me dearly, Clara. You sought to ruin me, but I shall have the last note." Holmes's eyes gleamed. Rossi believed Clara was undermining him, perhaps leaking details of his score to rivals. This explains her distress, but does it make her a murderer? I frowned, the weight of the evidence troubling. Her cigarette case, her initials, now these letters. It's damning, Holmes. Too damning, he replied. The clues are laid out like props in a play, each one pointing to Clara. A true killer would be subtler. We must speak with her at once. We descended to the theater's dressing rooms where Clara Beaumont had agreed to meet us, despite the late hour. The corridors were silent, the ball long-ended, and the air carried the faint scent of grease paint and roses. Clara awaited us in her small dressing room, her auburn hair loose, her face pale beneath the gaslight. She wore a simple shawl, her earlier harlequin costume discarded, and her eyes were red from crying. "Miss Beaumont," Holmes began, his tone gentle but firm. "We found letters in the attic, written by Rossi, accusing you of betrayal. Your cigarette case was beneath the stage. Your footprints led us to the tunnel. And now you appear at a ball, masked, near a cipher to the ball to watch, to see who might be involved." I was afraid. Holmes leaned forward, his eyes piercing. "And the letters? Rossi believed you betrayed him. Did you seek to steal his score?" Clara's face crumpled, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I wanted to hurt him, yes. I took a page of his score, just one, to scare him, to show him I could fight back. I hid it in the attic, but I didn't kill him. I saw someone that night, during the performance, a man in a black cloak slipping into the wings. I thought it was a stagehand, but now—" Holmes's expression softened, but his voice remained steady. "You withheld this, Miss Beaumont, and it has cost us time. Describe this man." "Tall, thin," she said, her voice shaking. "He moved like a shadow, quick and silent. I couldn't see his face, but he carried something, a bag perhaps. It was just before Rossi fell." Holmes exchanged a glance with me, his mind clearly racing. "Very well, Miss Beaumont. Return to your lodgings and speak of this to no one. We shall verify your story." As she left, her footsteps echoing in the empty corridor, I turned to Holmes. Do you believe her, Holmes? Her story is plausible, but the evidence against her is mounting. She is a pawn, he replied, his voice low. Her initials, her possessions, her motives, all are too conveniently placed. The cloaked figure she describes matches our second set of marks, boot polish, not talcum. Someone is using Clara to obscure their own trail. We returned to the attic to ensure no further clues had been overlooked. Holmes's lantern swept the shadows, revealing nothing new save for a faint scratch on the floor near the crate, a mark that suggested something heavy had been dragged. A safe, perhaps, Holmes mused, or a trunk. The key we found may unlock more than we expect. As we left the opera house, the fog had thickened, wrapping the building in a shroud. Holmes was silent, his mind weaving the threads of Clara's testimony, the score, and the cloaked figure. Back at Baker Street, he spread the letters and the score on the table, his pencil sketching with costumes hanging in the background. Thumbnail idea: Clara's silhouette, half-masked, against a backdrop of scattered letters and a glowing cipher, the opera house's stage faintly visible. Background music: tense, muted strings for the attic scene, transitioning to a soft, melancholic piano as Clara confesses, evoking her emotional turmoil. Sound effects: the creak of attic floorboards, the rustle of letters, the soft sob of Clara's tears, and the distant echo of ballroom music fading into silence. Engagement prompt: do you believe Clara's story, or is she hiding more? Who is the cloaked figure she saw? Share your theories in the comments. Chapter 8: The Stolen Score. The revelations of the masked ball and Clara Beaumont's tearful confession lingered in my mind as Sherlock Holmes and I returned to 221B Baker Street in the early hours of the morning. The fog had thickened into a dense curtain, muffling the clatter of our hansom cab and lending London an air of otherworldly quiet. Inside our lodgings, the fire had dwindled to embers, but Holmes's energy was undimmed. He spread the single page of Rossi's score, the ciphered playbill, and the small brass key across our cluttered table, his eyes gleaming with the intensity of a man closing in on his quarry. "Watson," he said, his voice low but vibrant, "we are nearing the heart of this mystery. Clara's admission of stealing a page of Rossi's score confirms its value, but her tale of a cloaked figure suggests a deeper conspiracy. The key we found in the attic is our next step. It unlocks something, perhaps a safe or a hidden compartment, where the rest of the score lies." I nodded, my mind still reeling from the night's events. Clara's story rings true, Holmes, but the evidence against her, the cigarette case, the letters, seems too neat. And this cloaked figure, could it be Vance, or someone else entirely? Holmes lit his pipe, the smoke curling like the fog outside. To the patron boxes, a row of opulent compartments overlooking the stage. Each box was a miniature salon, adorned with velvet chairs and gilded railings, reserved for the wealthy and influential. Holmes consulted the theater's records, provided by a reluctant Clarence Poole, and identified the box holders. One name stood out: Lord Victor Langley, a financier whose family crest matched the floral pattern on the key. His box, number 12, was closest to the hidden passage, offering a perfect vantage point for an unseen exit. "Langley," Holmes murmured. a man of wealth, but rumored to be in financial straits. The score could restore his fortunes. We entered box 12, its plush interior dim in the morning light. Holmes's lantern swept the space, revealing a small, locked cabinet built into the wall, its brass lock engraved with the same floral design as the key. With a soft click, the key turned, and the cabinet opened to reveal a bundle of papers. Not the full score, but a series of financial documents detailing loans and debts, many linked to Rossi. Among them was a letter in Rossi's hand, addressed to Langley. "Your threats will not sway me. The score is mine, and I shall protect it." Holmes's eyes narrowed. "Rossi and Langley were entangled, Watson. These debts suggest Rossi borrowed heavily, perhaps to fund his opera, and Langley saw the score as repayment. But murder? We need more." We searched the box further, finding a hidden panel behind the cabinet that led back to the alcove. The passage was a perfect route for a killer to slip from the box to the stage and back, unseen by the audience. Holmes noted fresh scuff marks similar to the boot polish we had found in the understage, confirming the path's recent use. Our next move was to confront Langley. But first, Holmes insisted on revisiting the stage manager's office. Suspecting Poole's nervous demeanor hid more than incompetence. Poole's office was a cramped space cluttered with schedules, props lists, and inkwells. Holmes's keen eyes spotted a locked drawer in Poole's desk, and with a deft hand he picked the lock, revealing a cabinet in your box, containing evidence of his debts to you. Care to explain? Langley's composure faltered, his hands trembling. "Rossi owed me a fortune," he admitted. "He borrowed to fund his lavish lifestyle and that damned opera of his. I pressed him for repayment, yes, but I didn't kill him." "And the score?" Holmes pressed. "Its value could erase your debts." Langley's eyes widened. "I heard of its worth, but I never saw it. Rossi kept it hidden, said it was his legacy. If it's gone, I swear I didn't take it." Holmes's gaze was unrelenting. "And the payment to Clarence Poole, recorded in his notebook, what service did he render?" Langley paled, his voice dropping to a whisper. "Poole. He offered to retrieve the score, said he knew where Rossi hid it. I paid him to look, but I never told him to kill." Holmes exchanged a glance with me, his expression inscrutable. "We shall verify your story, Lord Langley. For now, remain in London." As we left the townhouse, the drizzle had turned to a steady rain, and I felt the weight of the case pressing in. "Poole, then?" I asked. "Is he our cloaked figure, working for Langley?" "Perhaps," Holmes replied, his voice low. "But Langley's fear suggests he is a pawn, not a mastermind. The score remains missing, save for Clara's page and the fragment we found. We must search Poole's lodgings next." We arrived at Poole's modest rooms near the Strand, gaining entry with the help of a cooperative landlady. The space was as cluttered as his office, with stacks of playbills and theater receipts. Holmes's search was methodical, and in a locked trunk he found a hidden compartment containing another page of Rossi's score, this one stained with a faint smear of blood. "The plot thickens," Holmes said, holding the page to the light. "Poole had access to the score, and this blood suggests he was near Rossi at the time of death. But is he the killer, or another piece in this puzzle?" I shook my head, the threads of the case tangling further. Clara, Vance, box, the brass key glinting as it reveals Rossi's letter and financial documents. The opera house stage looms below, its bloodstain faintly visible. Thumbnail idea. The open cabinet, with the key in the lock and Rossi's letter spilling out, the shadowy stage in the background. Background music. A tense, minor key orchestral piece, with soft piano notes for the quieter moments, evoking the unraveling conspiracy. Sound effects. The click of the brass key in the lock, the rustle of papers in Poole's office, the creak of the trunk's hidden compartment, and the patter of rain outside Langley's townhouse. Engagement prompt. Is Clarence Poole the mastermind, or is he working for someone else? What do you think happened to the rest of Rossi's score? Share your theories in the comments. Chapter 9. Blood and Betrayal. The rain that had drenched London through the night gave way to a sullen dawn, the sky heavy with clouds that mirrored the weight of the mystery pressing upon us. At 221B Baker Street, Sherlock Holmes sat by the fire, the blood-stained page of Rossi's score spread before him, its notes a haunting reminder of the crime we sought to unravel. The brass key, the ciphered playbill, Clara Beaumont's tearful confession, and the notebook from Clarence Poole's desk formed a constellation of clues on our cluttered table. Holmes's eyes, sharp as ever, darted between them, his mind weaving connections with the precision of a maestro. "Watson," he said, his voice low but charged with purpose. "We are close to the truth, yet it remains veiled by betrayal. Poole's notebook and the score's fragment point to his involvement, but Lord Langley's fear suggests a larger hand at work. Today we confront Poole and search the opera house for the remaining score. The killer stage is set, but we shall upstage them." I nodded, my heart quickening at the prospect of closing in on our quarry. Poole's nervousness, his access to the hidden passage. Do you think he's our cloak? Found a notebook in your desk, detailing a payment from Lord Langley and referencing LV. You were paid to retrieve Rossi's score, were you not? Poole's hands shook, and he sank back into his chair. "I meant no harm," he whispered. "Langley was desperate, said Rossi's score could save him from ruin. I agreed to look for it, to search Rossi's dressing room. But I didn't kill him, I swear it." Holmes produced the blood-stained page of the score. "This was found in your lodgings, Mr. Poole. The blood matches Rossi's wound. Explain." Poole's eyes widened, his voice breaking. "I found that page in the understage, after the murder. I thought it might be valuable, so I kept it. But I didn't stab Rossi. I was in the wings, managing the crew when he fell." I interjected, my patience thinning. "And the cloaked figure Miss Beaumont saw? Was that you, sneaking through the passage?" Poole shook his head frantically. "No. I know the passage, yes. It's used for quick scene changes, but I wasn't there that night. I saw no one in a cloak." Holmes's lips curled in a faint smile, but his eyes were cold. "You withhold information, Mr. Poole. The notebook, the score, your dealings with Langley, all suggest complicity. Where is the rest of Rossi's score?" "I don't know," Poole cried, his voice rising. "I searched, but it was gone. Rossi kept it hidden, even from Madame Duval." Holmes leaned forward, his voice dropping to a whisper. "And Madame Duval? What is her role in this drama?" Poole's face crumpled, and he buried his head in his hands. She loved Rossi, or thought she did. He courted her, promised her the world. But he was cruel too. I heard them argue days before his death. She was heartbroken, but I don't believe she'd kill. Holmes straightened, his expression inscrutable. We shall see, Mr. Poole. Remain here. We have further inquiries to make. Her head. He was secretive, kept it locked away. I thought it was in his dressing room, but after his death I looked and found nothing. Holmes produced the pearl earring from the hidden passage. This was found near the stage. Is it yours? Her eyes widened, but she shook her head. No, I wear no such earrings. Mine are diamonds, gifts from admirers. That could belong to anyone, a chorus girl, a patron. We left her dressing room, Holmes's silence heavy with thought. She speaks truth about the earring, he said as we descended to the stage. But her love for Rossi complicates matters. Jealousy is a potent motive, Watson, and Poole's words suggest she had reason to resent Rossi. Our search continued in Rossi's dressing room, a small but opulent space filled with costumes and sheet music. Holmes's lantern swept the walls, and his fingers probed every surface until he found a loose panel behind a mirror. With a gentle push, it opened to reveal a hidden safe, its lock matching the brass key. Inside was the bulk of Rossi's score, dozens of pages, meticulously penned, but stained with a faint smear of blood. Holmes's eyes gleamed. The prize, Watson, or most of it. The blood suggests it was here during the murder, perhaps taken and then returned. But why? Before I could reply, a sharp crack split the air, a gunshot from the street outside. I rushed to the window, my heart pounding, and saw a figure in a black cloak fleeing into the fog. Holmes was at my side in an instant, his revolver drawn, but the figure vanished before we could pursue. A graze on my arm stung where the bullet had nicked me, and I cursed my carelessness. Holmes's face was grim as he examined my wound. A warning, Watson, or a desperate act. The killer knows we are close. We must return to Baker Street and plan our final move. We gathered the score and left the Opera House, the rain now a steady downpour. Back at 221B, Holmes spread the score across the table, its pages a testament to Rossi's genius and the motive for his death. The blood on the score and the shot fired tonight, he said. Point to still. We shall wield it tomorrow. Key visual moment. Holmes opening the hidden safe in Rossi's dressing room, the score's blood-stained pages spilling out under the gaslight. The mirror behind reflects the empty stage, its bloodstain a dark shadow. Thumbnail idea. The open safe, with the score's pages glowing and a faint bloodstain, the opera house's curtains framing the scene. Background music, a tense orchestral swell, with sharp violin notes for the gunshot, softening to a melancholic piano as Holmes reflects. Sound effects, the click of the safe's lock, the rustle of score pages, the sharp crack of the gunshot, and the patter of rain outside. Engagement prompt. Who fired the shot? Is it Poole, Langley, Duval, or someone else? What's the significance of the bloodstained score? Share your theories in the comments. Chapter 10. The Final Curtain. The drizzle that had plagued London for days ceased, as Sherlock Holmes and I prepared for the final act of our investigation. The Seville Opera House was to host a memorial performance for Signor Antonio Rossi that evening, a fitting stage for Holmes to unveil the truth behind his murder. At 221B Baker Street, The morning light filtered through the fog, casting a pale glow on the cluttered table where the blood-stained score, the brass key, the ciphered playbill, and Clarence Poole's notebook lay like pieces of a shattered mosaic. Holmes, his eyes alight with the clarity of a man who had solved the puzzle, paced before the fire, his pipe unlit but clutched tightly in his hand. "Watson," he said, his voice steady but charged with anticipation. "Tonight we draw the curtain on this tragedy. The score, the hidden passage, the planted clues, all point to a killer who thrives on misdirection. We shall gather the suspects, Madame Duval, Lionel Vance, Clara Beaumont, Lord Langley, and Clarence Poole in the auditorium. The truth will emerge, as it always does when pressure is applied." Weary of our presence, admitted us with a curt nod, and we made our way to box 12, Lord Langley's vantage point near the hidden passage. The box was a cocoon of velvet and gilt, its view of the stage unobstructed. Madame Duval arrived first, her emerald gown replaced by a morning dress of black silk, her face pale but composed. Lionel Vance followed, his jester's charm subdued, his eyes wary. Clara Beaumont entered hesitantly, her auburn hair pinned tightly, her hands clutching a handkerchief. Lord Langley, florid and nervous, was next, his fingers fidgeting with a gold watch chain. Clarence Poole was last, his spectacles slipping as he mumbled apologies for his lateness. Holmes stood at the center of the box, his tall figure commanding attention. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice clear and resonant. "We are here to honor Signor Rossi, but also to uncover the truth of his murder. A man was stabbed on this very stage, his blood a testament to a crime of passion and greed. Tonight, I shall reveal the killer." The suspects shifted uneasily, their eyes darting between Holmes and each other. I stood by the door, my revolver discreetly at hand, ready for any sudden move. Holmes produced the blood-stained score, holding it aloft like a conductor's baton. "This score," he said, "was Rossi's legacy, worth a fortune to those in debt or ambition. It was stolen, piece by piece, and its trail has led us through a web of deceit." He turned to Lord Langley, whose face reddened. "Your debts to Rossi were substantial, sir, and your box's proximity to the hidden passage offered a perfect route to the stage. You paid Mr. Poole to retrieve the score, did you not?" Langley stammered, his voice hoarse. "I did, but I didn't kill him. I only wanted the score to settle his debts." Holmes's gaze shifted to Clara Beaumont, who flinched as he produced her cigarette case. "Miss Beaumont, your initials mark this case, found near Talcum Build," then turned to Clarence Poole, who shrank under his gaze. "Mr. Poole, your notebook records a payment from Langley, and a blood-stained page of the score was found in your lodgings. You knew the hidden passage, had access to the stage, and were present during the fatal scene. Why did you kill Rossi?" Poole's face crumpled, his hands shaking violently. "I didn't mean to," he cried, his voice echoing in the box. "It was an accident, an impulse. Rossi was cruel to Eleanor, Madame Duval. He mocked her, broke her heart, and I couldn't bear it. I loved her, Mr. Holmes, loved her from afar for years. That night in the blackout I followed him through the passage, just to confront him. But he laughed, called me a fool, and I struck him with a prop dagger, not knowing it was real." The room fell silent, the weight of his confession hanging like a curtain. I felt a chill, the pieces falling into place, the cloaked figure, the blood on the score, the planted clues. Holmes's voice was gentle but firm. And the clues, Mr. Poole. The cigarette case, the earring, the letters. Poole sobbed, his spectacles fogging. I planted them to confuse things. Clara's case, a patron's earring I found, Rossi's letters. I wanted it to look like a conspiracy, to protect Eleanor. The score, I took it to sell, to start a new life with her. But I couldn't find it all. Holmes nodded, his expression somber. Your love was your undoing, Mr. Poole. Jealousy and desperation drove you to murder, and your attempts to mislead only tightened the noose. Duval gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Clarence, you did this for me? Poole nodded, tears streaming down his face. I couldn't let him hurt you anymore. Holmes signaled to me, and I stepped forward to restrain Poole, who offered no resistance. The police, summoned earlier by Holmes, arrived to take him into custody. The other suspects, stunned, dispersed, their faces a mix of relief and sorrow. As the auditorium filled for the performance, Holmes and I slipped out, the strains of Carmen beginning to rise. Outside the fog, opera house's crimson curtains and a shadowy figure in a cloak fading into the background. A triumphant orchestral swell as Holmes reveals the truth, fading to a melancholic piano for the resolution, echoing the tragedy of Poole's actions. The murmur of the auditorium crowd, the creak of the box's chairs, Poole's choked sobs, and the distant strains of Carmen beginning. Engagement prompt. Did you guess Clarence Poole was the killer? What was your favorite clue in this mystery? Share your reactions in the comments. Moral. Lesson. Unchecked passion, like jealousy, can lead to ruin, but reason and observation can cut through the fog of deceit to reveal the truth.